Alex Dekker. Alex is a changemaker with a mission. The founder of Alex Makes Meals, a non-profit that delivers over 3,000 meals each week to Melbourne's most vulnerable. Named 2024 Young Melburnian of the Year and featured in Forbes 30 Under 30, he brings heart, hustle, and strategy to social impact. A passionate advocate for equity, Alex is proof that when compassion meets business acumen, real change happens. Daizy Maan. Daizy is an entrepreneur, speaker, and trailblazer. After years empowering startups at top universities, she saw what was missing and built it herself. She founded the Australian South Asian Centre and Brown Women Comedy, a space where culture, leadership, and laughter meet. Daizy leads with courage, constantly stepping up to bridge gaps that others haven't dared to.
Ananya Tomar.
Ananya is a modern-day spiritual practitioner with a science degree in one hand and a deep spiritual practice in the other. With a background in environmental science, she blends science with spirituality in a way that's both relatable and refreshing. She is one of the youngest active practitioners of this ancient practice, breaking the stereotype that spirituality is just for the old or the retired. Through community workshops, radio programs, and youth conferences, Ananya shares how meditation can be a powerful tool for self-empowerment, clarity, and living with purpose, right here in the middle of a busy modern life.
Jaffery.
Al is an entrepreneur, changemaker, and facilitator in regenerative leadership. He's worked with global names like Google, IKEA, and Telstra, helping redefine leadership for a more connected, sustainable future. Twice named one of Australia's top 30 entrepreneurs under 30, and a nominee for Young Australian of the Year. Al blends modern leadership with ancient wisdom. A trained psychotherapist and meditation guide, he invites people to reconnect with themselves, each other, and the world around them.
These are not just guests, they're creators of change, connectors of community, and voices of a better world.
Okay, so welcome to the show, and today we are joined by Ananya Tomar, Jaffery, Alex Dekker, and Daizy Maan. So thank you so much, guys, for your time, taking the effort out of your busy schedules to be with us here today. And so today we're going to obviously talk a little bit about everyone's journeys, sharing some of your experiences, and I think finding a little bit more about what makes each of you, you. So we are joined by our listeners who I think will really look forward to hearing from everyone today. And my name is Wesley. Nice to be with you this morning. So we're going to go straight into something which we call Ola. So Ola is OLA, and basically it's one-line answers. We're going to start with Al. So I'm going to ask the same question to each of you. And basically the idea is just to take no more than 5 seconds to just come up with a one-line answer. So Al, first question for you is, what's one daily practice which keeps you calm in your busy life?
First thing in the morning, standing with my feet on the grass.
Wonderful, wonderful. Alex, same question for you.
I run 10Ks every morning.
10Ks?
It spends a whole hour, so it feels a bit like a waste of time sometimes, but it starts the day on a productive way.
Yeah, fantastic. Daizy?
I'd say exercise for the last couple of years, yeah. I'm really into Pilates. Every morning, hot mat, it's like a 30-degree room, and it just wakes me up.
Beautiful. And Ananya?
I think it's called the traffic control of the mind. That is what keeps me grounded, yeah.
Okay, can you explain that a little bit? Traffic control?
Just how we have traffic signals outside to control the traffic. It's a similar practice for the mind, just taking a minute of silence every hour, which is essentially, yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, next question. So imagine you're stranded on an island and you can only keep one mantra or affirmation with you. So what would it be and why? Maybe Daisy, do you want to start?
The first that came to my mind was just everything is temporary. Hopefully me being stranded is temporary.
Fantastic, very deep.
I think mine's in the exact same vein of it'll all be over soon, no matter what it is, you know?
I think mine would be all that you need is right here.
Fantastic. Ananya?
Yes, I think mine would be this too shall pass. So while you're there, enjoy it. Make the most of it. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, next question. So if you could have 3 people from any era to be on your team to support your cause, who would you choose and why? Maybe Alex, do you want to go first?
There's a lot of people to choose from, 40 billion. I think there's some pretty significant movers and shakers alive today. And the work I'm doing is very much trying to confront today's issues and today's challenges. So I think it would be some of today's real movers and shakers. There's some mentors of mine that one of my longest serving mentors, John, who's been in the industry for 40 years now, in the non-profit industry and working on it. Having him on my team, having my existing 2 right-hand people on my team as well, in Betsy and Heather. Honestly, that's probably my go-to. I think I'm pretty set with where I am right now.
Fantastic. Okay, who's next? Who's ready to go next?
I'll find my people. First would be Gandhi is someone that I often think about, feel about, call upon. Just the Satyagraha, truth force. Just someone to really, when I feel into what I know about Gandhi, just such courage to speak what feels really risky in a certain moment, but what feels so true and right from the kind of the largest part of my being. So he would be one. A teacher of mine, Trail Dowie, who's an incredible philosopher, thinker, anthropologist, a minister. And then another teacher, Kailok, who does a lot of really beautiful initiatory right work and facilitation at the kind of intersection of ecological movements and spirituality.
Wonderful. Fantastic. Ananya?
Okay. I think I'm going to say I had the first thought of Gandhi as well, Mahatma Gandhi, just because of his non-violent approach to everything. The other would be Magnus Carlsen. He's the world #1 chess player. I'm quite inspired by his strategic brilliance. That would be really cool to have him on the team. And another student from the Brahma Kumaris would be Dadi Janki. She's left the body 3 years ago, but yes, her vision, her aura, which had so much silence and power, that ideas would just emerge, visions would just emerge from her, just being there, present. And so I would say, these 3 people.
And wonderful. Quite a mix of people as well.
I think 3 people on my team to support my cause from any era. I think from the current, a couple of volunteers I already work with are great. I think there's someone called Rumali Kularatne. She's just so dedicated and very committed, and she just puts in so much work. So I think I've just loved working with her for a year. I think our previous my original co-founder, Sehar Gupta, she's also been excellent to work with. It's interesting. I think when I think of someone to support me for the cause, I think of very pragmatic, currently what's working. But if I had to reach back as well, there was a girl, her name was Layla Jana. She created a company called Sama Sauce and created thousands of jobs for people in need. I think it was in Kenya. Unfortunately, she passed away recently, but she was someone who I never got to meet, but from afar I consumed a lot of her writing and her thoughts and ideas, and she was at that mix of social impact and startups, sort of growing something that's dedicated to making the world a better place and helping people in need. Yeah.
Right, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, next question. So, what's the silliest thing that's ever disturbed your mood?
I think I have one. I think when you're looking for your earphones and they're not charged, that's just... And yes, and I have wired earphones as well, and when you have to untangle them, that just comes to my mind.
When I'm in an online meeting or going to take an online meeting and someone chooses the wrong video platform, just a different one than my usual, it just really upsets me as like just having to do that meeting on slightly unfamiliar technology. I just really sets the mood wrong.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I think when you're trying to plan to meet someone and there's like 10 back and forths, and it's like, this time, that time. And I'm so guilty of this as well. But
it's always the same people.
Yeah. It's sort of, yeah. And I feel like I have patience for them because that was probably me for half of my early 20s. But now I'm like, here's a schedule link. Or like, it shouldn't be this hard. I feel like we end up meeting for less time than we tried scheduling.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Very similar one. When there's like single questions in an email thread when we could just ask all the questions that need to be asked. Now I just pick up the phone. I'm moving much more towards just having a mobile phone as a phone and talking. But yeah, they're just constant back and forth of just asking single questions when most of the time we can preempt or create like a decision tree just so that it can be as quick as possible to get to actually meeting together.
Yeah, that's it. Knowing when to use emails as a medium versus just talking to someone. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Wonderful. All right, last question. What is one song that always lifts your mood?
There's this track by, I think her name on Spotify is Annie Alivalia, and it's called Anand Baya Meri Maya. I think it's a Sikh prayer, but I just like the way she sings it. It's really lovely. Yeah. I don't know if it lifts my mood. It calms me. So maybe it's more calming and relaxing and grounding. I think if I want to get energized, then I just listen to Punjabi pop music. If I'm like, wake up, and there's always some Punjabi pop music on my playlist.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah, I think for me, similar. If I want to energize myself, it's usually like tech house music that I would listen to. But Jacob Collier recently, listening like Little Blue by Jacob Collier it kind of lifts me up in the way that it meets me in my melancholy is how I describe it. So it just helps me feel so much more at home if I'm feeling low or kind of a dampened mood. And that brings the quality of liftedness. But if I want to just be energized, then I would choose something else. Yeah. But yeah, Jacob Collier, Little Blue. Very big.
Very nice.
I think there's this one artist I stumbled onto when I was like 14 years old. And no one really knows them. They're a German artist called SOHN.
I've heard of them.
You have heard of them. There we go. One of like the four like weird intersections of house music and like strange DJ mixing. But there's a song by theirs called The Wheel that is probably my go-to in terms of like something to lift me up.
Yeah. How often would you say you listen to that?
Oh, an embarrassing amount. Yeah, like...
I think I'm like the top 1% of fans for the track I listen to all the time.
Yeah, on my Spotify it was like 0.05%. It was...
Fantastic. Ananya?
Yeah, I think similar to what Alex said, this is just a song I heard growing up a lot, and it just brings all those memories back. It's called Don't You Worry Child by Swedish House Mafia. Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember listening to that growing up too. Yeah, it's a good one. It's good. Yep. Okay, well, thank you so much, guys. So We're going to go a little bit into some deeper questions, and I'm going to start with Alex. Yeah, oh, sorry. Yes, hello.
I'm ready, let's go.
So, Alex, so you're 24, and at this stage, you're already a founder of, you're a successful founder of Alex Makes Meals, which is a non-profit organization started during the COVID-19 pandemic. And basically, it supplies about 3,000 meals to people across Melbourne every week. So we know from your journey that you're a strategic thinker, you're quite visionary in the way that you go about things. So curious to know, what's the most significant lesson that you've learned about leadership through your work?
I think there are times when it is more valuable for you to not do the work. Because as a lot of popular culture around starting a company today, and a lot of the lessons that people just like accept or expect of founders is the 80-hour work weeks, the 90-hour work weeks. And those happen. Those do happen, even to this day. Like, I'll still pull those every now and then. But in order for you to move an organization or a movement forward, you need to be able to think clearly, and you need to be able to think beyond the immediate happenings of the company. You need to be able to go, where's this going to be in 6 months' time? What do I need to be? What do I need to both be, and what do I need to do to get us to where we want to go in 6 months' time? And you can't do that if you are physically in the kitchen, or if you are physically on the shop floor 80 hours a week. You have to learn to delegate the core parts of your company, the parts of the company that you're most proud of, to other people, so that you can work on the parts that you're maybe not so proud of, or maybe don't even exist yet. And the only way you can really know how to do that, or what those things that you need to do are, is taking that step back and seeing the company from the outside.
And I imagine there's a big element of trust in that, isn't it? To be able to trust those people that you're leaving those tasks to, and just know that it will carry on.
Oh, 100%. There's a huge thing that can really only be done by doing, and only learnt by doing, in both recognizing and finding talent, and then putting your trust in them and setting the path so that they can operate independently.
So I'm going to come across to Al. So Al, you're a keynote speaker in regenerative leadership. We know that you're an integrative psychotherapist as well, and you facilitate a lot of immersive workshops and retreats to really take people back into, I guess, reconnecting with themselves, reconnecting with the fragmented world around them. Can you just share something cool or fulfilling that you've done recently in any of your work?
Yeah. 2 weeks ago, or maybe even 1 week ago, facilitated a nature immersion retreat called a Vision Quest, which is, many Indigenous cultures have their own version of a Vision Quest. In Indigenous Australia, it's called a walkabouts, and it's essentially a rites of passage program for people to go out onto the land, or with the land, to listen very deeply for a vision that is their role or their place within their community in relationship to place. And so I facilitated one of those with a few other guides for about 20 young leaders. And it's just a phenomenal experience of being offline, no technology, cooking on the fire, swimming and drinking from freshwater creek, and being in a lot of very beautiful ceremonies together. Lots of listening, lots of sharing from the heart, lots of nature-based connection practices. And for me, just while they're out, because it's a 48-hour solo that they go out for, and they sit in their 3-meter diameter circle alone in the bush with just a tarp and some rope to set up if they absolutely need it. Other than that, they sleep under the stars, and we support them with practices to listen deeply to themselves and the natural world. And of course, put in place a lot of physical safety protocols. But while they're out there, we just get to hang out as friends, as the guides. And then they come back and we receive them back. We receive their stories, help them integrate in a very meaningful way back into their community. And it's just such a unique, very cool, very meaningful, and very connective practice also for us as guides. We just get to spend 10 days out in the wild with people who are very committed to finding or listening for what it is that feels like it's theirs alone to do in this world. And yeah, I just feel so topped up coming back every time.
Amazing. And so you mentioned that these were all young leaders, so leading organisations and groups of people, and obviously have very busy, maybe corporate or different professional working lives. How many of those participants actually came to this for the first time, and did you have people finding it very difficult to switch off?
Yes, for sure. Yeah. This is usually it's a 4-day, 4-night solo that people do. So they're out with the land for 4 days and 4 nights by themselves. This was a 2-day, 2-night because it is a lot more accessible for the particular audience that we're working with. And it's a lot more of a warmer introduction. There's, of course, a lot of fear going into it. For a lot of people, there's fear about the darkness, there's fear about the insects, there's fear about the snakes, of course. We live in a culture that's so protected. And the nature that when we think about nature, we think about it in this romanticized sense of like, it's so beautiful, yet actually it is quite wild and dangerous. And so when you're actually going to go out by yourself, all of that comes up to the surface. And so there's a lot of challenge in not having the usual distractions that we have. The phone, there's no journal, there's no music, there's nothing other than your mind and the land. And so it's an invitation, which is to put it warmly. More so, it's like a demand to actually sit with yourself. And that's really uncomfortable.
Thank you, Al. So, Daisy, question for you. So, you're a dynamic change maker. We know from a lot of the work you've done that you fearlessly bridge gaps where you see something is missing or underrepresented in society, and you have a lot of courage in creating platforms or different ways to uplift those people or to give them an opportunity. So we know you've done a lot of work with creatives and leaders through your community, the Australian South Asian Centre, as well as Brown Women Comedy. Fantastic initiatives. We know that you've had a very dynamic journey from when you worked in the startup and entrepreneurship space in your previous roles. What's been the most rewarding experience that you've had so far in everything that you've done?
Oh, it's a tricky one. At the time, they all seem very rewarding, to be honest. I don't think I've been very lucky that from being in my early 20s, I've always pursued things that have purpose at the heart of them. I don't think I ever fell into the trap of let's just do what everyone else is doing and get a job. I mean, I studied commerce. Most of my friends ended up at big accounting firms. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I just always pursued something that would light me up or be interesting because I knew I couldn't otherwise commit to it. So for me, I think the most rewarding of the different projects, probably this place we started, we had it for 6 months called Soul House. And the longer name was South Asian Women's Wellness Space. And it was around the second lockdown. We rented a property out in Belgrave in the beautiful Dandenong Ranges. It was like 3 cottages. And we had people stay there who were sort of healing from domestic violence, mainly South Asian women. It wasn't a safe house per se, like where you are escaping. It was more a healing, a sisterhood. And we were there for 6 months and it was just magical. It was... It was phenomenal. The just so much healing can happen when you come together and there's space and there's time and there's not the pressures of daily life and the grind.
Wonderful. Fantastic. Okay, Ananya. So you are what we would call a modern day nun. So someone who's redefining the perception of a yogi lifestyle in the 21st century. You help run a bustling meditation centre with the Brahma Kumaris in West Melbourne. You do this alongside working a full-time job as a professional. You're an environmental and sustainability officer in the chemicals industry. So as a young person, you've probably noticed that most young people out there in the world, they see spirituality as something that can be a little bit dry or a little bit serious. So how would you describe it in a way that really breaks down that image or that stereotype?
I think it is, I would share my experience, which is really breaking, you hear a word and you already have an idea about it. And words like meditation, spirituality, they already have a lot of perception, just like, they have many, ideas and labels attached to. When we listen to these words, there's, everyone's has ideas. But from something that I've experienced, I would share that from the very beginning, the earlier we start to just listen and understand ourselves, this is meditation, to get in tune, aligned with the true voice inside. And the sooner we start, we are opening doors to possibilities and opportunities where there is no scope of confusion and doubting yourself. And it is actually it's like adding colors to your, everyday life. And so, anyone, I can see that stereotype is already, breaking when I see Daizy, Alex, Al, and this is a very good example, sitting here in Melbourne. This is already happening, and there are so many people who have those experiences. I think it's just about sharing those experiences, and everyone's looking for the same thing. It's just that listening to someone who is experiencing it, who is practicing meditation, spirituality, that can, really help young people.
Yeah, wonderful. Well said. And I guess to just to carry on that theme, so as a meditation teacher, you obviously work with hundreds or maybe thousands of people. Through the courses and the retreats that you do, you're teaching people how to manage their minds, how to manage stress. What's something surprising that you've learnt from working with so many different people? Something surprising that you've learnt about people or about society through your work?
I'd say, now that I think about it, there's something that's very common, and yet it is surprising, that no matter how entangled our mind is in the past or how much we're holding on to, like when we have conversations before courses at the center, people share what they're struggling with, or it can be someone or something, or just a situation at work, something very simple, and it's the similar sort of things, but mind is so entangled in it. And when they walk in, it's like it's nearly impossible for them to get out of it. But I've seen that people can invest in meditation as little as 5 minutes a day, or even 10 minutes, in a week. And I'm just surprised each time, it works for each one, that it creates such a powerful transformation, such a strong shift. It's just like, each one is like a bird. And as soon as you give them the hint that you have wings, you can fly, and you see the flight is so natural and effortless. And often people don't even remember what they were struggling with when they walked in. It just becomes, they start enjoying the flight. So I find it's very easy to change what we struggle with.
Wonderful. And I guess there's an element there of these positive qualities that people have, they're already there within them. So in a way, would you say meditation is really just reconnecting them back to that part of themselves, which maybe they've lost connection with?
And that actually proves that we all have those qualities, because people come with such strong ideas about themselves. We still have ideas about, our own identity. I'm very sensitive, I get irritated easily. All these ideas people have about themselves because of the habits, that they have. And as soon as they start, putting some time and effort into themselves, just creating a calm space, it brings out, what we all have internally. And it's very simple. It's very surprising to me that it's that simple. It's right. It's just there. Something that Al said, you have everything right here.
Brilliant. I'm going to go back to Alex. So, Alex, you recently won the 2024 Young Melburnian of the Year. and you're also listed in the Forbes 30 under 30 for 2024 as well. So how do you manage the demands of running a non-profit while maintaining your personal life and your mental life and, you know, all the other aspects of your busy life?
Yeah. Well, for the first 3 years, I didn't. While I will talk down and eschew anti-hustle, and against any of the strange young person, you have to start a business to be successful rhetoric, the first 3 years of starting the business, it was incredible hard work and sacrificing everything else in my life to start and grow the organization. Now that we're more stable, we're outside of that COVID era, we're, you know, entering our 5th year of operation, we are more comfortable and we don't have to worry about where our funds come from in 6 months. We have to worry about what are we going to be in 6 months and where can we go? Less so, will we be? And so now it's much more of a question of finding that work-life balance, finding something where I can do things other than Alex makes meals. And so I'm very lucky to have a very understanding and very forgiving partner who will forgive me working till 11 p.m. at night when it starts getting, you know, very high pressure. But it is really about discipline and routine, I find, to manage all of it and manage yourself on top of it. Because it's not just about discipline and making sure you work when you're saying you're working and you're going to be working the whole time. It's also about stopping when you say you're going to stop, only working to your limits. And then having that same level of discipline, same level of commitment, same level of energy put into your rest. So that means you can't, one of the most dangerous things in the world to me is just ending up on Instagram and scrolling for 10 hours at a time. We've all done it. It is about taking active choices to be outside of your productive state, and choosing to do it well and choosing to do it in a way where you are still adding to your own value. And if that is spending time with your partner, if it is going on a run, if it is reading, writing, hell, even watching something you really enjoy, so long as you're not doing it passively, you are engaged with what you're doing. That's the kind of discipline I feel you need to be able to balance just modern life in general against yourself.
Yeah. And as you said, you're doing these things with intention, isn't it? You're doing it because you're creating that space to step away from all the important stuff or the other, the busy stuff, so that, and I guess in a way it sort of connects to what Al and Ananya had been talking about, you know, everything starts with our mind. And if our mind isn't in a good state, then it indirectly affects everything that we do. So is that something that you've ever sort of reflected on in terms of mental health or any challenges you've had?
Yeah, for the longest time when I was the center of the organization and I was the pillar in which the organization rested, my mental health and my health was directly correlated to the health of my organization's balance sheet, right? And to the health of how we were looking, how we were doing in the partnerships we were setting up at the time. And vice versa. My health, how well I was treating myself, how happy I was day to day, directly resulted in either us being able to raise more funds, being able to do more, keep volunteers longer, have a more sustainable working environment.
So I'm going to come across to, so back to Al. So Al, we already mentioned a little bit about what you do, but we know that your work really delves into human connection, psychology, and this whole thing about fragmented communities and reconnecting people back within those sorts of environments. Why do you think people are so disconnected, despite being in a world where we have so many facilities at our fingertips, which should be making it easier to stay connected? Why do you think, despite all of that, we are so disconnected?
Very big question. I can share from my own experience, which has a lot to do with shame as a queer man and as someone of Southeast Asian descent as well. And there are so many convenient ways. You speak of the kind of the comforts we have. There are so many convenient ways actually to evade or avoid ourselves. And by doing that, in my experience, and my startup experience from age 12 was very largely fueled by or motivated by a sense of shame and unworthiness and shame around my sexuality. If I could become successful or seen to be successful in a certain way, that would somehow help me soothe my sense of not enoughness, very fundamentally. And of course, at the time, incredibly unconscious. But only in taking these pauses to look back can I start to come to terms with what my motivational drivers were at the time. And so that was one way that I attempted to feel connected or to kind of fit in, which I think is very important to note is very different to belonging. But that was one way that I attempted to fit in, and only after doing that for 9 years and then going to Boulder, Colorado at a startup accelerator, which was very much about introspection and self-reflection, did I start to see how me fitting in or attempting to fit in was actually me distancing myself from myself, seeking acceptance as opposed to authenticity. And doing that is just a surefire way to continue actually, it's like a bottomless pit, like the hungry ghost in some spiritual traditions we'll call it, seeking something from a place of actually not feeling connected to myself in the first instance. So any interaction that I'd have with others, there's never going to be a sense of them getting to know me or me feeling seen or felt by them, because what I'm offering is not actually me in the first instance. It's this intermediary sense of self, which I can see in this era of tech-mediated connection. There's a longing for deep intimacy and a sense of belonging, but at the same time we have these tech-mediated relationships that are fueled often by capitalistic drivers or hyper-individualistic drivers around identity as opposed to connection. But I see time and time again with clients and in groups that actually there's this wordless longing for connection that maybe we don't even know that we can long for.
Yeah. There's a lot of depth to that. And something you said made me think of a book I read recently, and there's these two terminologies that they introduce in that book. One is experience, right, which we all probably use almost daily, this word experience. But they define it as it's something that we're experiencing or taking from the outside world. It's something external to us, and we typically experience it through our senses. But there's that sort of illusion about it, which I think you were sort of touching on. But it propagates a disconnection with the world around us, even though we don't realize it. And so then there's this other terminology that they use, which is called insperience. And it's the whole idea of starting to go within and to connect with yourself internally, to go into the realms of your mind. And from that you start to feel or see a different side of yourself. But the difference is that it's a totally internally generated kind of thing that we go through. And so the more that we're doing that, it's reconnecting us back to ourselves, and it's creating a solid foundation. And from that, we then are able to change our relationship with the world around us.
Yeah.
So I thought of that, insperience and experience.
Yeah.
So I can see Ananya's smiling, so I'm going to come across to you with another question. So not many people maybe know about Ananya, but Ananya moved from India to Australia when she was 18. And one of the main reasons you came to Australia was actually to help kickstart a meditation center. You did that while you were studying full-time. So it's almost like having two full-time roles at the same time. Probably faced a lot of challenges. Just curious to understand what inspired you to do something like that at such a young age, and can you share about any of the challenges that you experienced? What kept you going through all of that?
I think when I moved to Australia, it was not exactly to start a center, but I was living at the center. Starting a new center happened 3 years later. But the inspiration was just, I think in the age, at that time I could say adventure, want to do something new, absolutely something that's, in my family, I don't know anyone who has traveled outside of India. And so I have no cousins whatsoever, no family members outside. And I was doing a lot of practices from a very young age. I was in a Christian school. Then my best friend was Muslim, and so we shared a lot of ideas. At the age of 13, I got into Buddhism. And so when I started, the Rajyoga Meditation, I think just the inspiration and the motivation was to do something new with it, because I had a lot of ideas while, with experimenting with Rajyoga meditation. And those, I had a lot of examples as well, that I could, role models you can say, but we don't say, I wouldn't use the word role model actually. They're all students, they're all studying spirituality, practicing Rajyoga meditation. And those examples, all of their stories, very fearless, very courageous, just faith in themselves and absolute, connection with the supreme being, or, the higher power, as we can say. And I could see those living examples, which I was just reading in books and perhaps listening on television, and I could just see people around me, who had those experiences. So that was very inspiring, and I wanted to do something like that. I wanted to do it in a place that I've never been before. And I think I deliberately wanted to put myself in a challenging position and see how well I could survive. And it has only been a blessing, I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess on that, are there any examples you can share about any challenges you went through and what you learned from it?
Now that I look back at it, the challenge was, people would always ask me, is this a culture shock to you? Is this a cultural shock? And I would always say, no, not at all. I grew up in a school where English was our spoken language, all my family members, so it's very common. But now that I look back at it, yes, it is an absolutely different environment. It is a different culture. And I never realized how comfortable and identified we become. Anything that we're comfortable with, we're obviously identifying with it, comfortable or uncomfortable. We have identified with it. And I just never realized how easy it is to even take a, transport in India, just step out of your home. It's so easy. And to do that in a different country with, no one that you know. I came to a meditation center, but even the people there, I didn't know them beforehand. So that was a challenge, I think, not being able to relate, in the way I'd like to, not being able to put myself out there in a way that I do very normally. Just finding a way through that. So that was being more, I think, just connecting to people. I think a lot of things about being young and living at a center gives people, some ideas. People would come and ask me, have you been through a very negative situation? Are you in a troublesome situation? And that's why you're doing that. So you already have, when you put yourself in a position like that, people already come with some ideas, and that's very common. I think I'd do that as well. So I don't know, but I'm just saying that you already give people a lot of things to perceive, and so to pass through that, to go through that, and then make a connection was the challenge. And Australia, Melbourne especially, is extremely multicultural. There's so many languages, there's so many nationalities, religions, and so finding a common thread was a challenge. And I think I overcame it by just internally being aligned with who I am, and similarly creating that environment, making that accessible for everyone, and people, it's easy.
Yeah, wonderful. Okay, so Daisy, we've got another question for you. So, can you share a little bit about your experiences working with students and in the startup space? How did that influence your own growth as a leader and as a change maker?
That's so interesting. No one in my family had started a business. No one was entrepreneurial. So when I started working in the entrepreneurship space in the university, it was really an immersion into a skill, a lifestyle that I wasn't very familiar with. But I think over like every year, probably heard about 300 to 500 new ideas and pitches for startups. Through our various programs that we had running at the university. And I learned a lot of things. One was like how to actually start things, and how that so many people spend time thinking, planning this phase, but really it's about taking actions, and you're only going to learn through iterations and mistakes, and that's sort of called the lean startup methodology. And I sort of went on to apply that to lots of my projects and other areas. I think another thing is a lot of the founders I met had failed at 4 or 5 things before they actually succeeded at something, but the 4 or 5 things were not very well known. Like other people didn't really know about them. So everyone around you just says, oh, you did this one thing, you did really well. That's so cool. I could never do that. So that was something else as I got to work closely with founders. The third thing working with a lot of founders is sometimes the work that seems boring and mundane and repetitive is the work that gets results. So sure, there's the part of it that's like vision and motivation and strategy, and it's all very exciting, but sometimes it is in the follow-up, in the outreach, in the marketing, in the things that you might not necessarily want to do, like standard operating procedures, things that help the whole enterprise, the whole business run without you or with you less involved. I think those are important because it means you've built instructions for others and it's gone beyond you. So those are, I think, 3 areas that I definitely learned in the entrepreneurial space and working in it that I've taken into other things, like even just being able to grow Australian South Asian Centre, set up as a non-profit, but we're operating as sort of a social impact organisation. So we've been quite entrepreneurial. We hadn't, up until recently, we had not really received any grants or funding. So all of our revenue to sustain our activities was earned. And so I think I applied a lot of the sort of entrepreneurial skills I had. But I also learned, because I was there for 6 years managing it, the program, and I learned that there is this constant focus on growth. And sometimes I just didn't think that was congruent with living sustainably. Like it's like you're growing your revenue, you're growing this, there's a pressure to double the customers and to increase, especially in the startup space, not necessarily always in the small business, but this startup space, the idea is you're going to be a unicorn. And it's just, the unicorn is a company with a valuation over $1 billion, but there's almost this obsession with growth. And there's a culture that celebrates it. Press releases come out when you raise capital, venture capital is looking for companies with high traction. And I looked at that and sometimes it scared me because I just thought, what are we racing so fast for? Is it a race against time, a race against, like, why can't we grow slowly? Like, what's wrong with growing slowly and sustainably? That speed to having an exit or something, that there is a lot of pressure in the startup space for that. And that's something I didn't necessarily want to take as much because I just found that it would take a toll on my mental health. But it is a culture that on every level is reinforced. And sometimes I think what I've learned is there's nothing wrong with going slow and steady at a pace where you take care of yourself and the people around you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Very practical responses. And I'm wondering if any of that has come from, because I know that you personally have a bit of an interest in meditation. Mm-hmm. And I think you do annual trips, you said, to abroad to give yourself a bit of that time to, I guess, slow down and reevaluate things. So how much of that sort of practice that you do, how much of that do you sort of bring into, or did you bring into?
I think on a personal level a lot. Like, I think that practice has kept me sane. Like, I used to work really, really hard. There was times I think I fell into this trap of like 11, 12-hour days, even though I was not starting a business at the time. I was working for the university and nobody told me to do it. I just put that pressure on myself Often I feel like when we're ambitious, we're like victims of our own ambition and our own goals because it's never enough, right? So I think that never enough piece was filled when I went to the ashram in Rishikesh. I went there the first time when I was 19 to meditate. My plan was to stay 3 days. I stayed about 40. My parents got a bit worried. They're like, when are you coming back? And I was like, what is time? I was like, it's all an illusion. They're like, what is wrong with you? But I think that really taught me at 19, like the power of the mind, and also that it's so important to have your mind work for you and not be working for it, that we have some control over our thoughts. And that you can practice and get better at, I guess, being more conscious about your thoughts if you meditate. And so I think I brought that back in. There was a few things. One was the meditation piece, which helped me expand that time between like a reaction to something and it happening. So being a bit more calm and grounded and and becoming aware that I am someone who my work identifies me. Like I identify as my work, and that needs to change. That was something through meditation I also sort of experienced, because I experienced a level of, I guess, bliss and contentment that I hadn't experienced before. And I thought to myself, wow, if I'm sitting up here in the mountains and can experience this level of bliss and contentment, I've never experienced this before, like this is what I want.
Fantastic. And I think you're right. It is a process of constantly revising or revisiting experiences, but also things that we maybe have learnt or understood about ourselves. But like you said, it's one thing to know it, but to then actually be able to be it and to keep it in your awareness, keep it in your existence it's a
and you have to experience it. Like, it's fair enough. I have like the experience of bliss and contentment in the Himalayas, but do I have that when I come down here and have challenges with staff or team and, in the thick of it? Can you still practice those things? If you can't, then you've got work to do. And challenges, I feel like, are just showing you places where you've still got to grow. So every time things aren't easy and I think, why isn't it easy? It should be easy by now. I've been doing this so long. I think, no, this is a blessing. This is where I still have to grow. And the other thing I'll add is I think I'm quite self-aware, but I'm also my worst enemy sometimes. So that's something I have to remind myself, is that if I react some way to something and I'm like, oh, I should know better by now. I really should. I've gone there for a decade. How am I not perfect at this by now? But it's just understanding that it takes time and it's a regular practice. There's never really a destination that you're going to reach. And then after that, you're like, oh, I've got it now. I think it's a regular practice.
Yep. And a journey, isn't it? So do you think it is possible to to be in a state where you've got that level of peace or bliss, but you're still very much engaged in all of your roles? And I might ask the same question to everyone. Do you think it's possible?
I think it is. I don't think I'm there yet, but I don't think I'm there yet. But I think it is. I think it's very difficult because part of that involves like a detachment from what's happening around you, as in an emotional sort of, I don't know how to call it, not detached that you're ambivalent and you don't care, but detached that something significant can happen in your life and it doesn't alter your state of being for a long time. Often something significant happens and we can be quite distraught, but it's that sort of self-awareness.
Yeah. Same question for you, Alex. Do you think it's possible?
To be blissful and content in every part of our being? No. No, I don't. Starting my first company was one of the hardest things I've ever done in building something from nothing. It wasn't a blissful or content time. But then again, I don't think anyone would describe their 19 to 22 as blissful or content. That's everyone's early years are pretty rough, but they weren't without purpose.
Al?
Yes. And it makes me think of the power of virtue. And in my journey, I've swung like so quickly at times from side to side of having peak experiences and then grasping at them and attaching to them and then feeling so down in the dumps when I do come back home and it is real and I'm in the kind of thorny relational process with my partner and grasping for that peak experience again. And so it's been a constant process for me to actually, in some way, create my own compass. What actually is a realistic, a self-honoring, a life-honoring set of virtues that I can follow.
Ananya?
Is that possible to have the same elevated stage that you have up on a mountain, doing everything else? That's the question. Yes, I would say 100% that's possible, to have that same stage. We can say that I created it up on a mountain, so it's more like, can I create it while doing a job, while managing young leaders, while having a conference, while paying my bills? Can I have that stage? And yes, because I created it there, I can do it there. It's just more attention, more practice, and I would say discipline, practice, attention, and having that as giving value to that experience. I wouldn't say that blissful. You can be in a blissful experience at all times, but can I be in an environment constantly internally where I can create that experience when I want? So it's about that detached observer state that we often hear about. You're involved, you're detached but engaged. And is that possible? 100%. I think that is what has inspired me about the practice. It's wonderful that I can do it with everything else. It's just about an inner lifestyle and some external changes that assist that inner lifestyle and that practice. So yeah, I would say possible.
Would you see it like it's almost like a skill and you're just developing the mastery of that skill?
Yes, I would. Yeah, I would say that when I'm listening to that question, it's more like, can I be who I am at all times? And yes, I can be who I am at all times. It's harder to be something else than be myself, but of course, there's a lot more to that. I just don't want to put that statement. There's a lot more to how much we've distanced ourselves, from who we are, identified to so many things that I'm not. There's so many identities to nationality, language, culture, all of that, and I am living in those identities. So once I'm detached, the more I have a clear perspective of who I am, environment won't matter.
And it's wonderful. Well, I think it's a beautiful note to finish on. So thank you everyone for your time. Thank you for being with us, Al, Alex, Daisy and Ananya. So I think everyone's brought such a diversity of experiences and insights and sharings. And I think hoping our listeners have a lot to reflect on and probably something that might help them in maybe reconnecting with their own potential and their own strength, or discovering a different side of their own potential and strength. So thank you again, everyone.
Thank you for joining us at the White Table. Feeling inspired by the conversation? Start your own journey of change now.